Hi everyone, in this video I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the actual user interface of the Marshal. So in the previous video I had given kind of an abstract view of the workflows that are going on in the Marshal, and you can find that video just in the help and reference link here. That should be the top right hand corner of every Marshal page. So this is the Marshal inbox. It's the top link on the left hand side navigation bar here. So I've put in these 4 objects back into the inbox, even though they have been classified by the guys that are at the NTT at the minute, I think. Or this one came in as a CBET. But with these objects you can see that all the information is kind of displayed in a semi kind of compact view, so it's easy to see exactly what's going on with these objects. Over the left hand side you have the identity, and these names are actually links, so they are linked back to the survey pages. So if we click this, so it's going to the CRTS page, and there's all the information there. If you just go back to the Marshal, you see this object is actually being classified as supernovae 12EE. So whenever it does get ingested into the database, the cross matching is automatically done, so you won't get duplicate entries in the database. They'll always be folded into one entry. And this is a Sloan image here, so if there is a Sloan image you'll be able to see that. You're also able to comment on each object, so here you see Morgan's already commented. If you want to add a comment, you just click this plus button. So Dave, this is a new comment, very creative. And just click add, and you see that the comment's instantly added to the ticket. So it's dead easy to move these objects about these different lists. So if you just hover over the move button here, so anything that's in the inbox, you can either archive it or you can move it to the observation queue. So all these different queues are kind of laid out in such a way that really an object should come in at the top, and it's kind of slowly works its way down to the bottom here to the point where it's eventually archived with the rest of the objects. So when a ticket first comes in, or when an object first comes in, it will be placed in this inbox area, and they'll either come from the feeder surveys, or you can create a new ticket if there's an object that you know isn't in our database yet. Say it's an object discovered by an amateur that they've sent in an email, so you can just fill in this form with whatever. So whatever. And you see, as soon as you start typing, the box will be red until you've actually filled it in correctly, and the form validation goes through. And there's also these hints in the bottom right hand corner. It'll just tell you that, like, the survey name must be 3 characters or longer. It'll tell you whether our index right, the redshift's right, or you've input the right number of digits for the MGD or whatever. And you can select kind of a suggested type for the object as well, just basically giving as much information as possible. So we'll not go through with that. We'll just try and process these 4 objects here, just so you can see exactly where they should go in the workflow. So just say this object here, we decide that it's too old and we don't want to observe it, so we can just instantly move it to the archive. So you see it's disappeared there, and if we click on the archived link, so there's 156 objects here, so I'm not going to scroll. Oh no, there it is. So you can see that it's actually popped up in the archive list already. So the other thing you can do is to move an object to the observation queue from the inbox. So let's say we'll just move these 3 all to the observation queue, because we want to observe them and see what they are. So the inbox is now cleared. So if we come down to the observation queues here, we click in classification targets, I've kind of lost them in this bunch, but anyway, they will appear in this list initially. And from here, the guys at the NTT or whatever telescope we're using to classify these objects, once they have observed the object, they can just hover over this move button and click observed, and that shall push it through to this queued for classification area. And you see there's a ticket we've just pushed through. So in this area here, the classification and A-tail queues, this is for whoever's running the pipeline, whether that's the observer or the people back in Europe that are classifying the targets for that run. Once they have reduced the spectrum and they want to classify it, they just click the classified button, and it's a pessto object. They can fill in the MJD, the telescope, the instrument, and so on and so forth. Redshift, div, and we'll say it's a 1C, and you can either just click just classify if you know that this object doesn't need an A-tail, but mainly you're going to be clicking this button, so it's classify and send to alert queue. And there we go. So if we look in the queued for alert, here are the objects, and so this list will just pile up until we actually want to release an A-tail every night or every couple of nights. And once it's been, once the alert's been released, we just click released, or if we decide we're not going to release the alert, we just click never and clear that queue. So once an object has been classified, it will appear in this queued for classification and A-tail queues, but it also appears in this review for follow-up queue. So these queues aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. So an object will always appear where it's supposed to appear. It'll be automatically pushed through the workflow. So everything has its place and shouldn't get lost in the system. So these are the objects that we have observed, and they have had a classification, whether that's from pessto or an external classification. See, there's private communication here, so this obviously isn't a pessto object. Here's a pessto object. Here's an object that has been classified and an alert's been released external from pessto and has been released via an A-tail. So there's everything basically that's been classified that we know of gets dumped in this follow-up for review queue, and it's up to the target selection team to come through and kind of filter through this list and decide whether something is really interesting enough to follow up. So if you hover over the move menu here, you'll see that there's only two options. So you can either archive the object. If it's not interesting, we're finished with it, we just move it to the archive queue. Or we can decide that this is a great object, we want to follow it, so we just click follow. So let's follow a few of these. Archive that. Okay, just clear this queue out. Okay, so that's us down to 0. So once you've clicked the queue for follow-up, it goes into the second observation queue, which is follow-up targets. And so the guys at the NTT will check this list as well as the classification targets list for objects that they need to observe that night. So you'll see this all targets, which is basically just a combination of this classifications targets queue and follow-up targets queue. So this is the list really that the guys at the NTT will be working off. And again, they can move the objects to observed, or they can even push an object back to the inbox or whatever. So it's up to whoever is kind of the PI of the science project that's following each object to decide how long you want to follow each object and when to finish the campaign. But whenever you have decided that you've got enough observations of this object, just say it's this object here, got a few photometry points, you can just hover over here and finally just click archived, and that's then that's then archived, and that's the end of the workflow. So you'll see this archived queue here will have everything in it, so everything that's being classified, not classified, followed, everything will end up in this archived queue. Those objects that have been classified will end up in the classified queue. So these two lists here also aren't mutually exclusive. So an object can appear in one or more of these queues. So any questions that you have, just fire them off to Marshall. That's with 2 L's, the British way of spelling it. So marshall@pessto.org, and whoever's involved with the Marshall team will try and answer your questions. So if you try not to send me emails directly if you have a question, because then people can go back to the group's forum and kind of see what questions have been asked, and it's just good for reference. It's just so that information doesn't get lost. If you find a bug, or if there's a requested feature that you want for the Marshall, you can go to the wiki, and under targets and alerts, you'll see this Marshall bug list. I'll probably change this to Marshall bug list and feature request lists. But you can see here that there's quite a few feature requests are popping up already, and there's identified bugs here. So please just remember that the Marshall's still in beta. So I'm calling this version 0.5. So there will be quite a few bugs, and it's very underdeveloped. It's kind of very bare bones at the minute. But any future features that I'm going to add, I'll probably record another screencast like this, and I'll put all the videos up in this help and reference section, and I'll also put change logs and bug fixes and whatnot up here as well. Oh, one last thing. So up here we have pagination. I hope to kind of fill up this top area here with different features such as sort and search. But if you look, whenever you click on the pagination, there's these extra identifiers appear in the URL bar. So BI stands for body index, and that's equal to all classified because we're in the classified list here. But you'll see there's a page max 20, so that means we want a maximum of 20 objects in the page. There's page index 40, so this page starts at object number 40 that's in the classified list here. So all the features that I hope to add, search and sort and so forth, will also appear as different identifiers in the URL bar. This just means that you'll be able to build your own custom lists and your own custom views of the Marshall database, and save these bookmarks for later. So you may be interested in just type 1Cs. So you'll be able to kind of build that URL and save that list for yourself for later. It just makes things as customizable as possible, so you don't have to trawl through a number of links and forms to kind of come up with the list that you want each time. So yeah, again, any kind of bugs or feature requests, just send them straight to the wiki. Okay, thanks.